Good day everyone. This is our report for week 7. It's all about global trade and finance. So when we say global trade and finance, global trade is extends and complements the capacity of banks to deliver trade financing by providing risk mitigation in new or challenging markets where trade lines may be constrained. So, ibig sabihin nito, sila yung nagpapalawak or pinupunuan ng global trade ang finance program, ang kapasidad ng mga bangko na maghatid ng trade financing sa pamamagitan ng pagbibigay ng risk mitigation. The global trade and finance, sila yung nagpapalawak at nagpupuno ng global trade and finance program para sa kapasidad ng mga bangko na maghatid ng trade financing sa pamamagitan ng pagbibigay ng risk mitigation. Then, international trade. International trade globalization has preceded globalization in other areas. Then, patterns are very important for understanding international trajectory. Para mauunawaan natin ang trajectory or international trajectory, is kailangan nating malaman kung paano ang patterns na ito. Kasi ibig sabihin nito, kung nagpapatuloy ang globalization sa kalakalang pandaigdigang globalisasyon sa ibang bansa or ibang lugar, tapos ang mga pattern na iyong nakikita sa screen ay napakahalaga para sa pag-unawa sa international. So, importante ang mga pattern na ito for our international trade. Then, international trade. Before World War II, trade was largely a bilateral matter, subject to bigger than neighbor policies or reciprocal tariffs. So, bago ang World War II, ang kalakalan ay higit sa lahat isang bilateral na usapin. After GATT, then WTO. GATT, that means General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. Then the WTO is World Trade Organization. Trade managed in global and regional EU or NAFTA multilateral arrangements with adjudication mechanisms. Aim reduce barriers for all participating countries. MFN principle trade to allow comparative advantage to raise all boats. So ang layunin daw nila is bawasan ang mga hadlang para sa lahat ng mga kalahok na bansa. Ito ang kanilang prinsipyo or MFN principle. Ito yung prinsipyo ng MFN. So, what is MFN? MFN is most favored nation. The problem is inequalities produce enduring trade deficits. So, ang problema nila guys ay hindi daw pagkapantay-pantay ay nagbubunga ng nagtatagal ng mga deficit or deficits trade. So, what is deficits trade or trade deficits? Ito yung ibig sabihin ng income or assets ng international trade. International trade. Trade is more than merchandise. Ang trade ay hindi lang panininda or higit pa sa panininda like services or serbisyo, then intellectual property or intellectual na ari-arian, then tourism or turismo, then last is energy, oil and other carbon-based fuels. So, ibig sabihin nito is langis at iba pang panggatong na nakabatay sa carbon. So, international trade. Governance managed largely multilaterally. WTO adjudication based on massive multilateral agreements, trade rounds, regional trade agreements, and free trade areas agreements. So, governance managed largely multilaterally is sila yung namamahala or higit sa lahat ng multilaterally. So, sila yung pinamamahalaang higit sa lahat. Regional trade agreements and free trade areas agreements. So, NAFTA, NAFTA, or North American Free Trade Agreement. Then TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. Then TTIP, Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership. So, ang paghatol daw ng WTO batay sa napakalaking multilateral na kasunduan ay sa mga rehiyon na kasunduan sa kalakalan at free trade. Ito yung mga kasunduan ng WTO or World Trade Organization. Or ito yung mga agreements nila, NAFTA, TPP, TTIP. Ito yung mga agreement ng World Trade Organization sa international trade. Bilateral agreements and US-Australia FTA. So we proceed international finance. International finance, some numbers. Annual international trade flow 2016, annual international cross-border capital flow 2012, or daily flow of currency. So when we say international finance, sometimes known as international macroeconomics, is the study of monetary interaction between two or more countries, focusing on areas such as foreign direct investment and currency exchange rates. Ibig sabihin nito, exchange rates, bali may dalawang countries na mag-exchange ng rates or funds transfer. Like for example, a company of US sending financial assets to branch in Asia. So, ang company ng US ay nag-send ng financial assets to branch in Asia. So ito yung dalawang countries na nag-exchange ng rates or these funds transfer in between the same ownership. International finance, ito yung mga interaksyon na pananalapi sa pagitan ng mga countries na tumutuon sa dayuhang direkta na pamumuhunan o mga halaga ng palitan ng pera. So, ito yung mga pamuhunan o palitan ng mga pera, that is international finance. So, yun na nga yung sinabi ko, yung example kanina, the company of US sending financial assets to branch in Asia. So, these funds transfer is between the same ownership. So, international finance. Globalization of finance comes at the cost of sovereignty. The impossibility trinity. Country fixes its exchange rate against the American dollar and is open to foreign capital. To bring down inflation, central bank sets interest rates above those set by the Federal Reserve, attract foreign capital in search of higher returns. And the last, that would in turn put upward pressure on the local currencies. Eventually, the peg with the dollar would break. The policy trilemma. So, the policy trilemma, fixed exchange rates among all nations and the free flow of capital. So, this is exchange rate management. So, exchange rate management, the use of official policies to influence the exchange rate that emerges in the foreign exchange market. And the monetary autonomy refers to the independence of a country's central bank to affect its own money supply and conditions in its domestic economy, or sila yung nagko-control ng money supply, or the monetary autonomy is control the money supply. Ito yung the policy trilemma. So, free capital mobility. Ang free capital mobility ay no transfer or other cost in moving capital from one country to another. International finance. Case study in 1997-8 Asian financial crisis. Localized currency and financial crisis in Thailand spread to other Southeast Asian countries. By the fall of 1997, the contagion extended its reach to South Korea, Hong Kong, and China, a global financial meltdown had been ignited. In 1998, Russia and Brazil saw their economies enter a free fall, and international stock markets from New York to Tokyo hit record lows as investors' confidence was shaken by the volatility and unpredictability in the world financial markets. So in 1997, 8 Asian financial crisis daw, ang lokal na pera at krisis sa pananalapi sa Thailand ay kumalat sa iba mga bansa sa Southeast Asia sa taglagas ng 1997. Pinapalawak ng kontagyon ang pag-abot nito sa South Korea, Hong Kong at China. Ang isang pandaigdigang pagkasira ng pananalapi ay nag-apoy noong 1998. Nakita ng Russia at Brazil ang kanilang mga ekonomiya na pumasok sa free fall and international stock markets from New York to Tokyo. Then, May 14, 1997, Thailand spends billions of dollars of its foreign reserve to defend Thai baht against speculative attacks. July 2, 1997, Thailand devalues the baht. News of the devaluation drops the value of the baht by as much as 20%, a record low. In July 8, 1997, Malaysia's central bank invents to defend its currency the ring. July 11, 1997, the Philippine peso is devalued. Indonesia widens its trading band for the rupiah in a move to discourage speculators. July 18, 1997, the IMF announced that it will make more than $1 billion available to the Philippines to help relieve pressure on the peso. The IMF action is the first use of its emergency funding mechanism. July 24, 1997, the Singapore dollar starts a gradual decline. Malaysia's Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad accuses rogue speculators for Southeast Asia's economic upheaval. August 5, 1997, Thailand agrees to adopt tough economic measures proposed by the IMF in return for a $17 billion loan from the international lender and Asian nations, closes 42 ailing finance companies, and imposes tax hikes as part of IMF insistence on austerity. So we proceed international finance. Governance, IMF, powerful central banks, Federal Reserve. So ito yung mga namamahala. Mga namamahala ng international finance ay ang IMF, powerful central banks or Federal Reserve, ECB. And we proceed the second topics.